Let's get it. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker. Welcome to the SchuZ Show. Yes, I am well aware that it is a very, very late episode tonight. Don't get in the routine of this because it's most likely not going to be happening at this time that often. But there were some different things that occurred today that end up leading to the show being later at night. One of which is that we've got a massive card, for those of you that are not aware of, going down in just about 2 hours now. A massive card going down, and I'm going to be breaking down that card for you guys, giving you guys a preview of that fight card that's going to come up. We have 2 World Championship fights going on out in Yokohama, Japan. You guys are not going to miss out. I'm going to give you guys a preview of what to expect in that fight. But before I go any further, though, I'm going to get into some other things as well. I'm also going to give a recap of the fight. That let me just say this. I apologize because I was supposed to address what was probably the most significant fight of last weekend. Somehow was skipped in my show last week. And I have no idea yesterday. I don't know how that happened. So we'll be getting to Angelo Leo versus Kameda as well. Then I'm going to be getting into some boxing news. And there's been a lot of that happening over the past 24 hours. So let's get into today's show. Before I go any further, though, I want to make sure that for anybody tuning into the show, if you guys have any questions, any comments, anything you guys want to tune into the show and discuss, make sure you go put that in the comment section. I will make sure to address that after I get through each portion of these segments of my show. So make sure to tune in. But I hope you guys are all having a great Tuesday, Wednesday, wherever you guys are at right now. It's Tuesday night my time. So hopefully you guys are having a great Tuesday at this point in time. That being said, let's get right to this. So as I said, I gave you guys a full fight recap of everything that went down last weekend. And I said that was everything at the time. After the show, I looked through my notes that I had set for the show and my outline for the show, and I realized that somehow I missed up on not covering the IBF Featherweight World Championship fight yesterday. I realized that the second I ended the show, and that's on me, guys. So we have to break down that fight because that was a significant fight and lots of things to break down. Let's get right to it now. Osaka, Japan, following the co-main event, comes out Angelo Leo. He is the guy that obviously is coming over from the United States of America out to fight in Japan. And I made a very strong take on this fight on Friday when I was discussing the upcoming fights. And I said this about him. It was confusing for some people as to why Leo would be going out to Japan to fight. And I said there was another bit of story behind this. The backstory behind why he would be doing that fight is to make himself more appealing to Naoya Inoue. Inoue will likely be moving up to 126 in the near future. And if a legitimate case was made, a statement to say, was made on Saturday or Sunday, depending where you guys were when the fight happened, or Friday or Saturday, he could have put himself in position to have a massive fight. And so let's break down how I thought he did that night. He goes into the fight. Tomoko Kameda was a very, very good fight in my opinion. When we broke down the fight, the scorecards read this: 116, 112, 115, 113, 114, 114, all in favor of Leo, obviously, except for the draw there. But Leo comes out victorious. I think he performed fine. I think it was a good enough performance to get the job done. And in fact, I did have him winning there. I really think it came down to those final 2 rounds there. And I think in those final 2 rounds, Leo really solidified himself as the champion in that fight. Now, he was very, very competitive. It was very close. And that's why I will say this before I go on about Leo. For Kameda, if he decides to move on from boxing, I understand it. He's obviously experienced a lot of things. And this was one of his final world championship shots, you could say. But in my opinion, I think the way that he fought in that fight prove that he is able and more than capable of getting another world title shot if he so chooses to go pursue that. I think he had a great performance. I have nothing against him. And so what could be next for Kameda? I think Bruce Carrington would make a lot of sense. If the Stephen Fulton belt opens up, he could slide himself right into that position and fight Bruce Carrington for that world championship. Omar Trinidad, Nathaniel Collins, who just had a great masterful performance against Lee McGregor. Elijah Pierce is another name. Rais Alim. These are the names that I could see him fighting next that would all make sense for him. But if I were him, he can evaluate what he wants to do next. But I think his days in boxing are far from over. He had a good performance. And I think he could still have a few more years in the tank. As for Angelo Leo, let's get into this. When I watched him fight, like I said, it was a good performance. Was a statement made? Absolutely not. And actually, if I'll be honest, when I look at the way Angelo Leo performed in that fight, while I do like his ability, I think he's a fine fighter. I think he's a guy that was going to be able to defend his belt a couple of times. But I don't think he's a guy that would be able to compete with Naoya Inoue. And I made a tweet in the midst of that fight, and I said this: listen, when I look at this and I look at Naoya Inoue, and he's game planning, okay, I want to go to 126, become a world champion in another weight class, who would make the most sense for me to get my feet wet at 126? If I were to circle somebody I'd be pursuing, it would probably be Angelo Leo. For 2 reasons. One of which is, from a financial standpoint, with Leo fighting in Japan, getting himself familiar with the fan base out there, it does make more sense where that would sell a little bit better now. But number 2 for Naoya Inoue, I feel like that's a fight that he could come out. I don't ever want to say easy. This is boxing. Nothing's ever easy. But out of the other opportunities for Naoya Inoue to go out there and fight, I feel like Angelo Leo would make the most sense for a easier victory as opposed to the champions at the moment. And the reason I say that is, listen, Angelo Leo likes to attack. He likes to be attacking the guys, and he obviously is very, very talented. At the same time, his style of fighting is not going to be suited very well against a guy like Naoya Inoue, who has both power and skill. And when you combine those two aspects and put him up against a guy like Angelo Leo, where he would likely be greater than him in all those categories, I don't think that's going to be a fight that would cause too much issues for Naoya Inoue. And like I said, no, is Angelo Leo still a good fighter? Yes, but I'm looking at him from a perspective of what he tried going out there to Japan to do. Make himself presentable to Naoya Inoue. And when I look at that, from a financial standpoint, it does make sense for Inoue. But from Leo's standpoint, I don't think that was a statement he probably wanted to make out there. I don't think it was a dominant performance. It was a good performance, but not dominant. So what could be next for Leo? Listen, I would like to see him go and see what he can go get out there. At the moment, Inoue will be fighting MJ in September. After that, the rumors are 2 options. Either that be Nick Ball fighting him and becoming 126 champion at the end of the year, or doing the Junta Nakatani fight. That is still to be determined, but that seems to be the outline for Inoue. If that opportunity at the end of the year, most likely December, is available where he could slide his name into that discussions, I would obviously do that. Because you get to step in the ring with a guy in Naoya Inoue and possibly prove something like what I just said wrong. And I'm totally okay with that. And so that would be a great opportunity, a massive, massive payday as well for yourself. Probably fighting somewhere along the lines of the Tokyo Dome or some massive venue out there, get a massive payday, and make sense from that standpoint. But if that's not on the table and you want to stay a little bit more active, other names that I've listed right here, unify with either Nick Ball or with Espinoza. Obviously, you could say Fulton as well. I just believe that Fulton's not staying at 126. It seems all but solidified that he's moved to 130. If Fulton wants to remain, go ahead. That would make sense. 2 Americans could go out there and fight. Would be a solid fight to make. Or you could just get another fight underneath your belt, defend your belt once again, and then prepare yourself for the Inoue or whatever fight that might be. So there's lots of things on the table for Angelo Leo. As I said, good performance, nothing to knock against him. He was victorious. But when I look at the way he fights, I don't think he's a guy that's going to pose too much of a threat to Naoya Inoue if and or when Inoue decides to move up. Nothing against Leo. It's just that Inoue is that good, and I don't think that he has a game plan that would be able to be suited to go and maybe cause a lot of problems for Inoue. Now, obviously, anything can happen in boxing. That's the way I view it at this point in time. Now, let's head over to what we're going to be previewing now to come in the next couple of hours. As I said, we're going to stay out there in Japan. Yokohama, Japan card. We have 2 World Championship fights going down, and what is it now? I believe, let me check real quick. I believe it's 1:30 it starts at my time, which 1:30 Mountain Standard Time. 2:30 p.m., 2:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Yokohama, Japan, 2 World Championship fights. I'm going to preview the co-main event first and then hop into the main event. For the co-main event, Yoshiki Takai will be fighting Yutapong Tanguy for the WBO Bantamweight World Championship. This is going to be a good fight. I think when you look at the Bantamweight division, this is the fight that had to be made. It makes a lot of sense. And listen, Takai is the reigning champion. He's the guy that holds the belt. He's going up against Tanguy, which obviously is a very solid fighter. To give you guys backstories on both these guys, for Takai, he is a former kickboxing world champion. He transitioned to boxing in 2021. Great knockout power, and he has risen to this point where he's now at the top of the world as a world champion. For Tanguy, he's a guy that has Thai background. He has a strong amateur pedigree, undefeated in boxing at this point. This should make for a great, great fight in this fight. In my opinion, I think this could go either way, but if I were to give my opinion right now, I believe Takai would defend his belt. His power, his home advantage should be able to carry him to the championship to retain his belt in this fight. And that would set up for himself a massive opportunity because look at bantamweight right now. You have a massive fight going down with Junta Nakatani very shortly. And at that point in time, you could possibly look for an opportunity to have another home-based Japan versus Japanese fighter go down in Japan, which would make plenty of sense. So that could be on the table for himself if he wins this fight. I believe he will come out victorious. And so that's the fight to look forward to. Let's go to the main event. This is a fight that I don't believe is getting talked about enough. This is a massive fight going down tonight. Masanori Rikiishi versus Eduardo Sugar Nunez for the IBF Super Featherweight World Championship. This is going to be an incredible fight. And I'm a little bit shocked that it's not being promoted as much as it probably should be. I get for Americans this is going to be a very awkward time, middle of the morning. Middle of the night, I should say, however you want to look at it. It's 3 in the morning, this fight should be going down at. That's a very awkward, not preferable timeline, but this is going to be available on DAZN, and this is an incredible, incredible fight. You're talking about two styles that should collide to make for an incredible fight, possibly even a fight of the year contender if these guys fight the way that they're capable of fighting in. To give you guys a breakdown on this fight, Rikiishi is 16-1 with 11 KOs, where SchuZ Nunez is 27-1, 27 KOs. This is for the vacant IBF featherweight title at 130. Rikiishi is a Japanese southpaw, known for sharp counters, disciplined defense, whereas Nunez, he's a Mexican knockout artist. He's stopped every single opponent in all of his wins. This is a guy that knows how to show up. His only time he's not KO'd his opponent has been when he lost his fight. This guy has explosive power, which is why he's one of the funnest fighters to watch, in my opinion. These two styles should collide for an incredible fight. Rikiishi will have the height advantage in this fight. He should be able to use his reach. If he utilizes his reach in this fight, it's going to be a much easier fight for him. The question is that Nunez is going to be putting the pressure on him throughout the entire fight. He has incredible power. He needs to get in the mid-range, up close, and if that happens, if Rikiishi cannot keep him at bay and keep his distance, this is going to be a very short fight. And that is why, in my opinion, I believe that Nunez will pull off the fight, get the win, get the victory, even in Rikiishi's home country, by mid-round knockout. I think his power, I think the way he's able to move and get inside, and I don't believe that Rikiishi will be able to hold Nunez off. I think Nunez will be able to get into the mid-range, get up tight, and will be able to pull off a KO in the mid-rounds. That's my opinion on that fight, but listen, this fight has a chance to be spectacular. It's going to be happening at 3:30 in the morning, Arizona time, which is about, what are we now, 4.5 hours away from occurring. That is going to be a sensational fight to watch. You're not going to want to miss it. It is going to be one of the best fights that you're going to see this week. Probably will be the best fight of the week, and has a chance to be one of the best fights of the year, in my opinion. Incredible fight going down there. Now, let's transition into some boxing news. Over the duration of the past 24 hours, there's been lots of news. I'm going to start off with something that is an unfortunate news that came out about 12 hours ago. And then I'll transfer into another portion of the show, which will be discussing other boxing topics. The unfortunate news is something that I touched up on yesterday. Hiro Shigeoka has suffered an acute subdermal hematoma and has undergone brain surgery following his defeat to Pedro Tartaron on Saturday. The former IBF strawweight world champion lost consciousness after the result was announced, and he remains unconscious and in hospital under anesthesia. Obviously, that's not a good thing. It's not the news people want to hear. Obviously, what happened after that fight was tragic. It didn't look good, and obviously, we now know the information of what occurred afterwards. Thoughts and prayers are with him. His family has recovered from this. They've already mandated, and in terms of the medical clearance for him, he's been forced to medically retire. Obviously, that was pretty much a given in the situation. Just wanted to add in that note to the Japan Boxing Commission already released. So he was not going to be returned to boxing. At this point, as I said yesterday's show, boxing does not matter. This matters about life or death in the situation, and we have to hope they pull through in the situation. It's not looking the best according to the reports that we have right now. We have to keep our thoughts and prayers with him, and hopefully Shigeoka will be able to return to life and be able to have a successful life moving forward. Obviously, that's our hopes and prayers at this moment in time. Obviously, it's a hard portion to transition from that into the rest of boxing. As at the end of the day, I said, boxing is a fun sport, but there is a lot of things that matter more than boxing, and life obviously is significantly more valuable than that. So we're going to transition now to the best we can into a few of the boxing news topics that's happened over the past 24 hours. First and foremost is this, and I had this topic planned for today's show in regards to Jamal Charlo, Caleb Plant, what's next? This weekend on Saturday, this weekend in total, we have a lot of action going down at 168. You have a title eliminator on Friday night between Beck and Darius Fulgham, and then we head over to Saturday night, and you have Caleb Plant and Charlo having what is considered by many to be a tune-up fight. Now, obviously, we have to see if that ends up being a tune-up fight for those guys. They have to do their parts, but a lot of moving pieces at 168. What do I expect in this fight? Well, we've already heard so much news that everybody's been discussing the fact Charlo, he's going to be fighting Caleb Plant. If both guys come out victorious, they'll probably do a face-off after the fight and get the promotion rolling for a fight later this year, which would be a massive fight. And Charlo even came out and said this, that the fight with Caleb Plant will happen in due time. Here's my thoughts on this situation. Am I against a Charlo and Caleb Plant fight whatsoever? Absolutely not. I would love to see that fight, especially now. Let me say this. I want to see how Charlo looks on Saturday. We've seen Caleb Plant, I think 8 months ago we saw him in the ring. We know what he's capable of. he's fine. Charlo's been out of the ring a lot longer than Caleb Plant has. And obviously he's gone through a lot of stuff since he's been outside of the ring. Do I think he can return to a fraction or at least a near form of where he was before? Sure, he has obviously could do that. He's not too old. He didn't take a lot of damage in his career either. But what does Charlo look like? He has been inactive. Is he able to still come out on top and perform with a good victory against Thomas Lamana? That's to be determined. But here's what I will say. There's a question I can ask now. Caleb Plant has had his back and forth with another fellow 168 title contender, Edgar Berlanga. And so I propose this question to those listening. Would you prefer to see Caleb Plant versus Jamar Charlo or Caleb Plant versus Edgar Berlanga? At the end of the day, I feel like as a boxing fan, I would be happy with either route. Either outcome would be fine with me. But I have to propose a question because both of those guys seem to be the two guys that Caleb Plant's rumored or even being set up, you could say, to fight later on this year. And as I was going back and forth, listen to this. I could give you guys a more clear answer on Monday following the fight. But if I were to answer that question right now, I honestly would prefer a fight with Edgar Berlanga. And my reasoning behind this is, listen, I think that Edgar Berlanga, while certainly is annoying, certainly has his quirks about him and is quite interesting, we cannot deny the fact that that fight would be an incredible build-up. Like, let's put the fighting portion aside from that fight right there. Edgar Berlanga is one of, if not the best, at promoting a fight right now in the game. He's a top tier person, and Caleb Plant is also a top tier person. You get those two guys together, we're going to have one heck of a build-up. Both from a social media aspect, press conference, you name it. That build-up would be insane. And let's go even a step further then. Inside of that ring, we get a bad taste for Edgar Berlanga. What he did against Canelo was very questionable. Obviously, now that we've seen what happened with William Skull, it wasn't that bad. But still, it was not a good performance. But I still believe that Edgar Berlanga is a more than capable fighter. And so when I look at the situation, I feel like that would be a perfect fight where the winner of that fight would easily set themselves up for another big payday, with whether that be Canelo Alvarez or that be for somebody else. And so in my opinion, that's the fight to make. I would not be shocked, though, to see Caleb Plant versus Charlo get made. And I'm not against that fight at all, as I said. That would be a great fight to have happen. I think that if Charlo goes out and performs on Saturday, that my opinion could change on this. But at this point in time, I really do like to see a fight between Caleb Plant and Edgar Berlanga. I feel like that is the fight that needs to get made by the end of this year. It's been brewing for way too long. It needs to happen. And if all goes according to plan, you could easily still make the Charlo versus Caleb Plant fight happen in 2026. But in terms of timeline right now, especially if Edgar Berlanga defeats Hamza Shiraz, that fight makes too much sense to make. That's my personal opinion on that, and that's the fight I like to see happen if all that goes according to plan. Now, I'm going to go on a very short break, then we'll get right back to boxing news. As I said, for those of you tuning in, if you guys have any comments, any questions you want me to address, I'll get into that shortly. Leave it in the comment section. I'll be right back after this short commercial break, and we'll get back to the remainder of the show. See you guys shortly. Welcome back, everyone, to the SchuZ Show. I'm your host, SchuZ Shoemaker. So, a few more topics before we go and wrap the show up for today. One of which is this. Frank Warren has told the ring that Moses Itoma's next fight won't be for a world title as he does not want to rush him. I will say this. That's exactly what needs to happen. And I actually want to explain this. He also said another quote. He said, "We could have rolled the dice and got Moses a world title shot. But his career is a marathon, not a sprint. I want him to learn his trade." Perfect. I have nothing against that. In fact, that's what I think should happen. And let's be honest right now, I don't think they really had another option. Usyk Dubois is going to be fighting here in a couple of months. Usyk probably is only going to fight one, maybe even two more fights in his career. That other fight won't be happening until 2026. And if anybody else gets a world title shot not named Joseph Parker, there's going to be an uproar in the overall heavyweight community. Now, you could make a debate if Usyk wants for some reason to have a trilogy with Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury, that could also make sense. But the point is, there's no shot that Itama was going to be getting the world championship shot next. So, I don't think there's anything against that. I don't think that was ever going to be on the table either. And I don't think it makes the most sense. I think for Moses Itama, he is a special talent. I talked about him yesterday. He obviously is the number one prospect in all of boxing right now. His future is very, very bright. But you have to build it properly. Next step is fighting a top 15 ranked guy. The following step after that is to go and fight a guy in the top 10 of Ring Magazine rankings. And at that point in time, if you become victorious after both those fights, it's time to go fight for world title. And that timeline also lines up with those title odds. So it makes a lot of sense going that way. Nothing against that. Callum Smith versus Anthony Yarde is still reportedly in the works and could take place this summer. The Ring understands. This is despite Frank Warren confirming that the plans for a second Queensberry Matchroom 5 vs 5 event has been shelved, which is unfortunate. I really do think that I would have liked to see that 5 vs 5 rematch. That would have been a fun. That was a great thing they did last year on June 1st. Unfortunately, it appears that's not going to be happening now, even though we're a year removed from the 5 on 5 tournament. So hopefully we do see it in the future. But my thoughts are on this. If we're going to look at the fights to make, the best fights to make at light heavyweight, not named Bivol Beterbiev, I think the obvious answer is going to be David Benavidez versus Callum Smith, or even David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. I would prefer David Benavidez versus Callum Smith. I discussed it on last week's show. But if we're looking at this, Callum Smith versus Anthony Yarde would be an interesting fight. It would be a massive fight domestically in the UK. But I feel like if we're going to be honest right now, why would one of those two guys not prefer a fight with David Benavidez? And I think that has to be the holdup here, that if one of those two guys are looking for a fight, it would be against David Benavidez. If they're trying to see if that fight happens. I know David Benavidez has been talking about holding out for a little bit. Maybe he'll be returning in the end of the summertime. We'll see what ends up unfolding there. But if I were them, I'm holding off, seeing if one of them can get David Benavidez. That's the fight to make. And if that doesn't come to fruition, then yes, fighting Callum Smith and Anthony Yarde would still be a great fight to have happen. But if I would prefer that, it'd be David Benavidez getting involved. Ryan Garcia is set to undergo hand surgery on Tuesday in Los Angeles to repair damages sustained to his right hand. Garcia reportedly injured his hand during training camp for his May 2nd fight against Rolly Romero. He can resume training in 6 weeks. All right. This news came out today. I'll give props to Ryan Garcia for not taking excuses right after the fight. Now he announces it is what it is. He's going to be having hand surgery. Did that impact what happened on that Friday 1 month ago? I don't know. If we look at the fight, if we look at the way Ryan Garcia fought in that performance, the fact that he did not want to throw anything, the fact that he just kind of let the fight happen, would it be too shocking if his hand was seriously injured? No. I think it makes perfect sense that his right hand had to be operated on. But at the same time, it's always difficult when fighters come out with excuses and have these injuries. You don't know when it happened, what occurred. There's a lot of backstory we can go into that. My thing is this, is if this was seriously an injury that Ryan Garcia had, and he is much better overall, and he believes that he's ready to take on the rematch for Rolly Romero, I think the rematch between those two makes the most sense. That would be a great fight to have happen, easy to promote, and it would be a perfect fight to have happen. I would love to see Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero do a rematch if that is to be on the tables. And I think that could be done. Now, obviously, we're going to have to see, is Ryan Garcia ready? I think does he need a tune-up? What's actually the extent of his injury? All those are to be determined. What we do know is that Ryan Garcia is having hand surgery, and we'll see what occurs there. Hopefully, he has a great recovery, speedy recovery, and we see him back in the ring in the near future. It's going to be interesting to see how he recovers from this. My final two things we're going to get into, actually. There's 3 things. One of which is this. 2024 Olympian Ori has retired from boxing. He was a Great Britain Olympian at super heavyweight, and today he announced his retirement from boxing. He signed a deal with Frank Warren's Queensberry Promotions, But in April, just about a month and a half ago, shockingly now announced his retirement. Now, he gave some reasons behind that. It is interesting timing, though. Who knows why exactly he wanted to make that retirement, especially after he just signed with Queensberry just a month ago. So we will see what ends up happening with him. Best luck in his future endeavors. But that was massive, shocking news that came out today. Other thing, Anthony Joshua was reportedly working on a brand new 3-fight deal with Turki Al-Sheikh in Riyadh season. That means he had 3 fights in the tank at least. One of those is going to be against Tyson Fury. It's just a matter of time until that gets announced. But it'll be interesting. Where does he go from there? Obviously, if he beats Tyson Fury, that does potentially even set up a chance for him to get another shot at Usyk. Usyk has said in the past that's a fight he'd be entertaining. If that happens, it'd be interesting to see what unfolds there. Only time will tell, though. But I think overall, Anthony Joshua discussing a 3-fight deal with Turki Al-Sheikh is entertaining. One of those fights has to include Tyson Fury. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. I still think that fight will happen end of this year, early 2026. Only time will tell, though. But that is the fight that I think expect to be happening on that 3-fight deal. We'll see what's unfolding there, though. The last thing I want to get in today's show is something that unfolded a couple of hours ago. And I don't really like getting into Teofimo Lopez almost every single show, but I feel like I end up having to do that because he keeps running his mouth. This time he might have went a little bit too far in the extent of a business side. It's nowhere near what he said in terms of the racial things. Those are obviously been addressed. I'm very disappointed in him. I've gone against what he said countless times already. But from a business standpoint, saying what he said today was quite foolish, if I'm going to be honest with you. He decides to come out and he says a tweet that's now been deleted, dictator at Turki Al-Sheikh. And in the dictator, he spelled it purposely wrong and highlighted dick. Now it's just the thing you're going to be saying to Turki Al-Sheikh. And the reason I say this is 2 parts. One of which is that you've decided to play on this entire racial, deciding to go down a racial timeline. And that's the way you've decided to promote yourself and make yourself more talked about. Disappointing that way. I think it's a disgrace on why he's doing that. But that's the way he decided to brand himself. The only way he's really going to be getting big fights and money right now is if he stays on the side of Turki Al-Sheikh. Because at this point in time, nobody really likes him. Nobody's going to go against him. Nobody supports him. And he's put himself in a very, very tough predicament. Where if he does not align himself with Turki Al-Sheikh, it's going to make problems for him. And for him to go out there and say dictator to Turki Al-Sheikh is probably not the wisest thing for him to be doing. Not smart. And so Turki Al-Sheikh responds saying this: maturity is to realize most things don't deserve a reaction. And I agree. Let's be honest. Teofimo Lopez is somebody that I do not have a lot of respect for in the way that he runs his mouth. I think the way he talks about, the way he handles his business is not appropriate, is ridiculous, is a shame, is a disgrace. And I don't support him. Now, is he a good fighter? Sure. But the way that he runs his mouth is not the way of business I'd be doing. I think it's a disgrace the way he does that. And at the end of the day, I think Turki Al-Sheikh is 100% right here. There's no reason to even comment on this. Teofimo Lopez says a lot of things out of his mouth. Does he mean them? Is it truly what he's saying? I have no idea what he's doing. I think he's dumb with the way he speaks. That's my opinion. It's a disgrace the way he speaks. And then the fact that he goes out there and deletes, it's really interesting. Did he actually mean to send that? Or did he accidentally send that? Regardless of what it is, he's got to address himself and figure himself out. Because the way that Teofimo Lopez is handling business right now, constantly staying in the headlines for bad things is not a good thing. Some people could say, oh, it's great for branding himself. Well, guess what? At the very same time, I think what led to the situation is that Teofimo Lopez also is no longer getting a fight with Boots Ennis. And I'm totally okay with that. I don't think that was the best fight to make either. I think Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney was the fight to make. And the winner of that fight could then go ahead and fight Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis has a mandatory to fight anyways. And Teofimo Lopez running his mouth the way he did is not the best way of running your mouth. I made that statement clear last week or 2 weeks ago. If you're Teofimo Lopez, you don't need to be out there running your mouth time and time again. You need to make sure that you do it in the right way, and what you're doing right now is not the proper way of doing that. If you're Teofimo Lopez, your job is to go out there and make yourself an entertaining fighter. And he had a good performance on that Times Square card, but you also need to promote yourself the right way. And at this point in time, you're putting yourself in a very tough predicament from your racial things you've been doing, and now you're going to go after the guy that just paid you a lot of money to fight in the Times Square card, and the guy that was likely going to be the only shot at you getting a big fight, you just decided to call him a dictator. It makes no sense. And so Teofimo Lopez, like I said, earlier this morning, he said that Boots Ennis declined to fight against him. Teofimo Lopez claimed that Jerome Boots Ennis had rejected his fight for a unification fight with, or it wouldn't be unification, but it'd be for the WBA, IBF welterweight title fights, and that's the fight that Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to make, supposedly, he says. He says this then as well. With that being said, I am not sure if I will continue to be a professional boxer since everyone is together and holding hands like their life savings depend on it. What a shame. That's Teofimo Lopez's statement there. And let me say this. First and foremost, Boots Ennis likely has a mandatory to fight. You could pay him to step aside, all different things, but Boots Ennis does have a mandatory to fight. Boots Ennis and Teofimo Lopez, while it would be an interesting fight, is not the best fight to make right now. I've said that time and time again. Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney should fight each other, then the winner of that fight gets a shot at Boots Ennis. That would make more sense. Teofimo Lopez has had a good performance on that Times Square card, but over the duration of the past little while has not had a good performance. And then he's gone on running his mouth in a disgraceful way. In a way that does not make Boots Ennis necessarily want to fight him, but a way that probably causes a lot of shame to Teofimo Lopez. And if I'm going to be honest right now, Boots Ennis is likely to decline that fight because it was a mandatory. And second of all, he doesn't have any necessity to go fight Teofimo Lopez. And so for Teofimo Lopez to then go out and say, well, I don't know if I want to be a professional boxer. Well, let me say this. That's a shame. It is a shame that you said that. What a shame. Yeah. What a shame that you just had to run your mouth the way you do. And at the same time, there are other top fighters that want to fight you. Devin Haney has made it very, very clear that he wants to fight Teofimo Lopez. Go fight him. Just because Boots Ennis has a mandatory fight to go fight next does not mean that it's a shame. And I don't know what extent he said when he said Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to make that fight. Sure, maybe in the future, but right now that fight did not make a lot of sense. It would have been an entertaining fight? Yes. Would it have been an interesting fight to see how it went down? Sure. But Boots Ennis has a mandatory to fight first. And if you're going to do anything, move up to 147 first, get a fight underneath your belt, and then go fight Boots Ennis if you beat Devin Haney. And that would be a good fight in and of itself right there. So when I look at this opportunity, no, it makes no sense to me that Teofimo Lopez is wanting to possibly step away from boxing. First of all, he's not going to do it. He might fake retire or do something along those lines once again, but he's not retiring permanently. He just likes to run his mouth, say crazy things to stay in the headlines. It's a weird way of doing business, but that's how Teofimo Lopez does it. My biggest thing for him now is him saying the dictator tweet is not a good thing for him. Because if he could not get those big fights at the present moment before he said that tweet out, without Turki Al-Sheikh, he's not going to get any of those big fights. There's no way, shape, or form he's going to get that. And now, Turki Al-Sheikh could obviously put those behind him and go move forward with Teofimo Lopez. Sure. But running your mouth and showing that you are mentally unstable to the extent that you're going to be running your mouth and saying these crazy things and think that is wise. Listen, even if you think that about Turki Al-Sheikh, why are you going to tweet that out? And then delete it. If you really want to stand by your words and you wanted to call Turki Al-Sheikh a dictator with the DICK all in caps, then leave that tweet up and make that statement. But the fact that you pulled that tweet down immediately after, and on top of that, you're going to try to go out there and say that now what are you going to do for a fight? It makes no sense to me. Because Teofimo Lopez is going to put himself in a worse and worse situation. He's losing fans. He's losing his support. He's losing Turki Al-Sheikh, who's going to be one of the only people that could get him a big fight lined up. And you're just going to keep throwing this stuff down the drain. I said this 2 weeks ago. Teofimo Lopez is hurting his legacy every time he opens his mouth. And he continues to do it once again. But this time, he's losing it by his words. And on top of that, he's losing it now by what he tweets. He's going to have to grow up a little bit. Maturity is a fact. And when Turki Al-Sheikh said this response to him, maturity is to realize most things don't deserve a reaction. He was spot on. Teofimo Lopez is a great fighter. His mental space is not a good place. He needs to get himself mentally figured out, how he's going to proceed with his life, and stop trying to do this ridiculous shenanigans online with your mouth. And actually do it the right, if you're going to become a villain, do it the right way and get yourself the right position. Because the way you're doing it right now is only going to hurt yourself in the future, and you're not going to get the big fights that you want, and you're also going to tarnish your legacy. So it's up to you to decide on what he wants to do. But in my opinion, he's doing this the wrong way. With that being said, folks, I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Hope you guys have a great rest of your guys' Tuesday if you guys are still on Tuesday, Wednesday if you guys are on Wednesday. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your guys' day. May God bless you guys all, and SchuZ is out. See you guys tomorrow.